So a new overview trailer just dropped for Elden Ring Nightreign a couple days ago, and it's chocked full of new info. So let's get into it. Let's start with probably the biggest thing in terms of importance, which is the changing world and environment. The first being this shot of what appears to be the Cathedral of Manus from the DLC, but in some kind of warped, broken down state with a crazy kind of tornado thing spiraling above it. But you can clearly see the same statues in front, indicating that these two places probably have some relation at the very least. The next notable shot is this meteor strike. I have seen some people online hinting that this could be Radon, which I think would be awesome, but it's also very unlikely. It looks much more like a falling star beast judging by the similar craters that they form. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but that does seem to make the most sense. Now the first big change that we see is this volcanic canyon, filled with enemies that seem to resemble those found in the mountaintops of the giants. And this area looks to be a pretty substantial change in the map, and I'll get to why that and some of the other areas are such a big deal a little bit later. But I do want to call attention to something that you may have missed. Take a look down deep into the lava pit. There seems to be an altar or something at the end of those rows of torches. So perhaps this is sort of a dungeon that can randomly appear. Something that you can actually go inside of, which means there's probably also a mini boss of some kind. Perhaps this fire prelate. Or maybe something more sinister like a magma worm. Also in this shot, we can see a landing point for a spectral hawk that no doubt serves as the means to get in and out of this area. The next area looks like an absolute nightmare, to be honest, but it also seems to be quite sizable as well. Here's how the trailer explains it.
Or dark forests, shrouded with corruption, that rots anyone who dares explore it.
So as if poison swamps weren't enough, now we have to deal with a rot forest. I hope they put some really good items in it, or else I think the majority of players will opt to just avoid it altogether. Or maybe they make it the final boss area for one of the nights. Now for your and my sake, I would hope that's not the case, but there is something pretty interesting in this shot right here. Notice in the background there is what seems to be an Erd Tree avatar standing in the clearing. Normally you get a crystal tear from killing these, but in Nightreign there is no wondrous physic flask. So maybe you will get something else worthwhile. We'll just have to wait and see, I guess. But unless it's good, I ain't going in there. Now in this shot we see an example of a minor world event. This exact thing actually happened to me in the playtest while I was trying to loot some chests. Another one that I experienced was a random insect attack from the sky. But they didn't happen very often. Across around 12 hours of playtime, I can only remember those two events. Although I did get invaded by Margit several times. But I hope they increase the frequency in the full game because little things like that really help to keep things interesting. Now I honestly have no idea what is going on here. On the left is a spectral hawk, but those big floating orbs have never been seen before, and the trailer doesn't have anything to say about them at all. So this is kind of just a mystery at this point. But the next shot is something that we should all be familiar with. So it looks like the Madness Eye will be one of the things that we will have to contend with in Limfeld. Which is awesome, but I can see how it could make for some agonizingly brutal areas. But honestly, I kind of hope that that's true because from my time in the playtest, Elden Ring kind of needs a little bit more oomph in the difficulty department. I might come to regret those words, but we shall see. Now the reason I say that this section is perhaps the most important is that one of my biggest concerns about Nightreign after playing it was its long-term success. I think it will do very well right out of the gate, but I worry that it will begin to fizzle out after a couple weeks. Mostly because during the playtest, the map didn't change at all and the random events were few and far between, which had me slightly concerned that the game would go stale for a lot of players way too quickly. So them showcasing how substantial some of the world changes will be takes a load off my mind and has me thinking that perhaps this could grow legs and stand the test of time. Especially if they do regular updates with new playable characters, Nightlords, and gear. The possibilities are really endless. If they choose to support this game, it could really be a living, breathing experience that evolves as the different franchises have new entries. But we'll just have to see about that. Next, let's talk about the characters. We already knew about the Wilder, Guardian, Recluse, and Duchess, since they were all playable in the playtest. And the Raider and Iron Eye have both had their own dedicated reveal trailers. So I'm not going to go over them at all because we already pretty much know most of the things about them. But we also got to see some more gameplay of the Sekiro style class that we now know is called the Executor. And that class looks absolutely sick. I cannot wait for the full reveal trailer. But the biggest thing is we finally got to see what the final class that had not been shown up to this point looks like. Not much was really revealed about them, as the trailer conveniently stopped explaining the characters once these two started showing up on the screen, no doubt because they are still planning on giving them their own reveal trailers. Now we do pretty much know what the final class is though, because it was leaked a couple weeks ago. So I don't want to go over any of that since it's not really confirmed. But Ishizaki did say in an interview with IGN that she was a class based around spirit summons. And she certainly does look like a non-melee type of class, judging by her aesthetic and the fact that she is wielding what seems to be a harp. Although we do see her attacking with a scythe type weapon later on in the trailer, so it would seem that summons aren't her only method of combat, but we will just have to wait for the official reveal before we know much more for sure. Now, one thing I want to point out about a class we already knew about is that Iron Eye seems to be a bow-only class. Maybe he will be able to use other kinds of weapons, but every clip we see of him, he is always using a bow. Sometimes even different types of bows, like this flaming bow. Now this could just be a weapon art for his basic bow, but it is interesting that we have never seen him switch to another weapon. Now if you compare this to the class we just mentioned, it's kind of interesting. She is a non-melee type class, but yet she has melee attacks in the trailer. But in all of Iron Eye's trailers, he's never melee attacked once. Could be nothing, but it's interesting though. Now, one of the big questions following the playtest was what could be done with the currency called Merc that you accrued from successful runs. We now know that it can be used to purchase relics and other various items from a jar vendor in the Roundtable Hold called the Small Jar Bazaar. We can see a variety of different gestures you can buy down there at the bottom. We can also see different relics and something called a Scenic Flatstone. In the description it says, purchase to reveal its precious gift. We aren't really sure what that means. Could it be that it is a random relic that once you buy it, becomes something either really powerful or kinda basic, like a wild card of sorts? But the most interesting part in this section is this screen right here. You can see these goblet items that are listed as character specific, and they read enables new relic right. And then in the bottom right corner, you can see a sequence of colors. So basically in Nightreign, relics are permanent buffs that you can apply that follow you through run after run. And each character has a predetermined color set that they can equip. 2 blues and a green, red, yellow, blue, whatever it may be. So these goblets will actually allow you to change that color sequence to be able to equip relics of a different type or in a different sequence. And you can see that there are 8 of them, so 1 for each character. But I would imagine that there will probably be multiple that you can unlock for each class. In addition to the jar vendor, you can also use Merc at the fitting mirror to buy different costumes for each character. The most notable ones that they showed off was the Farum Knight set and the Solaire set. I cannot explain to you how awesome it will be to run around Nightreign as Solaire. But this raises 2 questions. One, what other possible costumes could be available? Wolf from Sekiro, Bloodborne Hunter, Andre the Blacksmith. There are so many awesome options that they have with this. But the second question is, will the Merc only be attainable through game sessions? Or will it be purchasable in a store with real money? You know that will cause a firestorm on Twitter. The next thing we learned is how we will go about learning the lore of the characters. Here's how the trailer puts it.
As you battle against the night, fragments of your lost memories may return, giving you glimpses of who you once were. By recovering these fragments of lost memory, you can fill in the blanks of your Nightfarer's blurred recollections.
But the most exciting thing about this is that the trailer stated that from time to time, as you uncover these lost memories, you will be given side quests by the other Nightfarers to complete in the game, which even further adds to the replayability. Playing with every character to unlock all of the lore and complete all the side quests will definitely be something I am setting out to do, and I bet I won't be alone in that. Although I wonder how it will work with a team. You will probably need to be teamed up with friends or people you can communicate with, since you will need to go to specific locations to complete the various tasks. Of course, there is always solo mode for all of us friend-impaired players. Now in the final portion of the trailer, we get a look at 3 new Nightlords. We already knew about Gladius from the playtest, and the 3 new ones we have actually already seen before in previous trailers. We just didn't know they were Nightlords at the time. So if you remember, we've actually seen this dragon-type Nightlord in a past trailer getting shot by Iron Eye. What is strange is that the dragon is not in a Nightlord arena here, so that makes you wonder if maybe he didn't start out as a Nightlord, or maybe you will encounter previously defeated Nightlords in later play sessions. I think that would be really cool. But the next one is the Centaur type Nightlord that is probably my favorite so far, just judging by the looks. It seems to do a lot of holy damage attacks similar to Radagon at the end of the base game. But another thing I noticed is that when we first see him, he is missing one arm. And then a little later, he is shown with 2 arms, one wielding what might be an axe or something. So I think it's pretty safe to assume that he probably grows back his arm as like a second phase transition. It could be something else, but it makes a lot of sense. The last Nightlord is actually one that has just had an official reveal of its own. It's called Libra, Creature of Night, and bears a striking resemblance to the Basilisk, so you would think that it applies Deathblight. But in the reveal that features a full fight against this boss, we can see that it actually applies Madness. Now I say it's a full fight, but it looks like they have a very specific jump cut placed here for some reason, probably meant to conceal a second phase transition or special attack that the developers wanted to keep from spoiling. If I had to guess, it's probably this attack right here at the beginning of the trailer that they mention as something that killed them when they did not know what it was. Regardless, it looks like a super fun boss, and the narrator said that they spent a whole day attempting this boss and could not beat it until the next day. Now, it is always kind of a hit or miss with journalists when they talk about difficulty, since not all of them, and sometimes very few of them, actually play the types of games they are reviewing. But I hope their assessment is accurate for a seasoned player, because honestly, Gladius was a little too easy in my opinion. The other really interesting thing takes place before the fight even starts. They interact with what seems to be an NPC called the Scale-Bearing Merchant, which offers them what looks like 3 different buffs and one option to refuse a deal altogether. They choose to decline the deal, and the NPC morphs into the Nightlord. This brings up a lot of questions. Why did they decline? What happens when you pick a buff? Why is it called a deal, and what do you have to give up in return? But unfortunately, all these things we will have to wait to find out for ourselves. Now, if you made it this far in the video, you might be enjoying it, so consider leaving a like and subscribe if you haven't yet. If you don't, they're going to add adaptability. Now, real quick, I just want to go over a list of the other bosses we now know are confirmed to be in Nightreign. The Duke's Freya from Dark Souls 2 is confirmed with her signature beam attack. Great to see Dark Souls 2 getting some love. We also saw a Godskin Noble, Estelle, an ulcerating tree spirit, the Dragonkin Soldier, and Godric. All of them are pretty much just copy and paste, except for Godric. He seems to have had a Crucible Knight upgrade added to his back. Fighting a Crucible Godric 2.0 is sure to be exciting, and it really highlights all the possibilities they have to get really creative with the wealth of bosses they have to pull from. Gravity Magic Millennia, anybody? I'm kidding, of course. That's an automatic uninstall if I ever heard one. But if you're interested in more and want a deep dive into my time in the playtest and what I thought, click the video on screen. And if you guys noticed anything I missed or have any thoughts on what I went over, leave them in the comments and let me know what boss you'd like to see in Nightreign. My vote is the Beta Chaos.